I'm going to talk about faith, and I'm going to talk about patience, and they could be sisters actually, but they're not. So faith was an interesting one for me because I never had faith. I had a real difficulty with faith, which didn't make me a good Lutheran, because being a good Lutheran, you needed to have a little bit of faith when you got to certain places in the doctrine. I also didn't have much faith in the world around me either, because some of the issues that came up with understanding the world didn't make sense to me. For instance, mathematics. Nobody ever told me why or how mathematics would be useful. They just said you need to learn it, because one day you will use it. So I thought about all the times I've used algebra, and maybe they were a little overly optimistic. And then I wondered about geography, and I would look at the map and I'd see these lines and these names of countries, and oftentimes the names would change. And I thought to myself, how do we know they're there? You know, I mean, people that come from Australia have a little accent, but it could be a speech impediment. We don't know, you know. So I was struggling with having faith in all the stuff I was supposed to take to be real and important. So when I came to Buddhism, and Buddhism said you need faith also, I was really disappointed. But then I understood what kind of faith they were talking about. And the faith they were talking about was, you need faith to begin your path, to begin your journey. You need faith in this respect, that there may have been somebody 2,600 years ago that found a way to end suffering. And we may know his name, and he came from a family, and he had a certain practice that he did which allowed him to become free, and it might allow us to become free if we do his practice, but he can't do his practice for us. We have to do it ourselves. And there I was. Did I want to believe? Did I have faith that this might have been the case? And so the temples that I went to initially, this one and Dharma Vijaya Buddhist Vihara, they said, well, you know, you don't need faith. They said, you just need to test it for yourself to see if it's true. And if it is true, then faith isn't necessary. If it's not true, then you can have faith, or you can discard it as being not useful to your practice. So there I was, and I said to myself, well, there might have been somebody 2,600 years ago, and he might have spoken this way. He could have spoken in Pali, the canonical language, but then you talk to the experts of the Pali language, and they say, no, nobody ever spoken that. And then the experts would say, and you know, we don't even know if he actually said the things that he said, we just assume that he did. And so it was interesting for me to have to deal with experts who knew far too much, and people like myself who knew nothing, and to find the proper balance in that. So I decided, well, I'm not going to let them create my reality for me, which is probably why I was single and stayed that way. So I said to myself, I'm going to test it out. I'm going to see if what he said is true. And so I had enough faith to take the first step. And I would meditate, and I would read, and I'd try to understand the teachings of the Buddha, and I couldn't do it directly because it was far too complicated, so I would read stories and books about people who went to meditation retreats or Zen centers and listen to them and their explanation of what they did and how they understood Buddhism and the path. And after reading quite a few books, then I bought some commentaries on what the Buddha said. And that allowed me to get a little deeper understanding, perhaps, of what this person may or may not have said. And then I was actually able to read some of the sutras myself and make sense of them and go, oh yeah, that sounds about right. And then I would test them in my meditation practice, or I would test them in the world to see if what they had to offer was a good alternative to what I was experiencing. And it was. It worked out just fine. So what I needed was that first step of faith. And what happened after that was the second step of confidence. That I was now confident in the path and the teachings of the Buddha because I had used them in my life and they proved to be true. They proved to be true because I suffered less and not more. And I continued, and experts continued as well to write books and give commentary and to tell some what they felt was true and untrue. And I would then ask myself, after reading some of the books, I wonder why they got there. I wonder why they feel that's their truth. And I wonder why I can't see it. And then it dawned on me that, you know, we're all unique. We all have our special karmic attributes. And we're all going to hear and decide and create our reality because of our experience, our education, a variety of reasons. And no two will ever be the same. And so I thought to myself, I guess I am going to be stuck with my reality as long as I live and breathe. And I can learn from others by what they're doing, but it may not directly apply to what I'm doing. So I have to be smart enough, I have to have enough discernment to understand if it would be useful or not useful to me. Which can be problematic in Buddhism, because there are certain sects of Buddhism, for instance the Tibetan tradition, where you honor the Guru. I honor the Guru, I honor the Buddha, I honor the Dharma, I honor the Sangha. And see, that never really caught me in the way it was supposed to, because I didn't want to honor a human. I wanted to honor what the Buddha stood for and what he may or may not have done. And all the humans I've ever met have been a little disappointing in one way or another. And I figure that's just the human condition. Then we have the problem with Zen masters. And the problem with Zen masters for me is this, that the Zen master is telling you what he did and how he achieved his enlightenment, and he has students following him to achieve his enlightenment. Well, the few Zen masters I've listened to, I didn't want their enlightenment. It was okay for them, but I wanted something else. I wanted to have a sense of humor. I wanted to enjoy chocolate cake. I wanted to practice kindness and compassion in perhaps feeding cats and caring for them. And I never found anybody who wanted to do the same things I wanted to do. So I came to the Theravada tradition and they said, well, what you do is you study and then it's up to you. That it's your path and your nirvana and your enlightenment. And you study with your teacher for 1 year or 5 years, and then you go to another temple, and you go to another temple, and we have all these monks temple hopping to get the teachings from this teacher and teachings from that teacher. And then what happens is all those teachings manifest in them. And they have a unique voice, and they have a unique practice, and they're going to have a unique kind of enlightenment and perhaps nirvana because it's theirs. So this faith goes to confidence, and the confidence allows you to continue to practice even when you're in the middle. So you have a beginning, and you have a couple weeks where you're brand new and beginning and it's really interesting, and then you have an end which may or may not ever happen. And in between the beginning and the end there's a lot of middle. And that's the real challenge, I think, of this practice, is dealing with the middle. Because sometimes it seems like you've plateaued and nothing new is happening, and you may or may not have succeeded in what you're trying to do, or you may have failed miserably, and maybe instead of vipassana you need samatha, or maybe you should have read that book instead of this book, and you have all this stuff happening in the middle. And yet you got to keep taking that next step, and then next step, and then next step, because you can never stay in one place, and you can never go back. You have committed yourself, whether you knew it or not, to always go forward. And that's where we come to the second place, the place of patience. Now, patience can be a real challenge. Yesterday, I officiated a wedding in Palos Verdes. And Friday, I had been there at the rehearsal, and we had lunch, and we had a lot of interpersonal conversation, and everybody wanted to know 5 minutes about me, and then they went and talked to their friends and relatives. And it was a lot of fun, and then we said, okay, we're all going to meet tomorrow for the wedding. And you know, when you live in Los Angeles and have to drive more than a couple miles, you never know how long it's going to take. So I left like an hour and a half early to go to Palos Verdes, which normally would take 40 minutes. But there's never a good day to drive in Los Angeles. So I decided I'm going to be smart and stop off at Food for Less and get the cat food that I need before I hit the freeway. So I'm in line, and all of a sudden the checker leaves. And I don't know why she left, you know, but she was angry at something, and she just walked away, and I'm standing there, and it's my turn to pay, and I've got no one to pay. And I was there for 2 or 3 minutes, just sort of standing there. I didn't get angry, I didn't get happy, I just sort of stood there and waited for that moment to change. And I thought to myself, yeah, you know, you got to be someplace at a certain time, and of course this is going to happen. It's just the way life is. People are overly optimistic about life. They always think it's going to get better. I know it's always going to get worse. And it's proven every day to me. So finally she comes back, she's sort of resolved her issues, and she apologizes, and so I get into the car, and then I get on the 110. Well, I am wondering where these 40,000 people in my lane are going at the same time I am. And why are some driving heedlessly, and why are others driving far too slow, because they're looking at screens naturally. And I am just sort of like, okay, patience, patience. So how do I practice patience? What have I decided to do to practice patience? The first thing I do is I forgive. Forgiveness is the key to patience I have found in my practice. That I forgive all the jerks in line in front of me. I forgive all the people on the freeway with me, preventing me from getting there as soon as I need to be there. I forgive myself for wanting things to be different than they are, and not being able to see the true nature of reality, which is exactly the perfection of the moment I find myself in. So after 20, 30 minutes of forgiveness, I finally get into the mind state of patience. And I start to reflect on time and how obsolete it really is. That we use time to measure events that happen on a regular basis. So we have the Earth going around the sun, and we have the Earth revolving, and we have days and months and years and minutes and seconds. And we have somehow come to the idea of being able to feel time. Sometimes time feels to go really fast. And sometimes time feels like it's going really slow. But time is doing nothing at all. It's just this concept you have in your head as you're standing in the present moment waiting for something good to happen. So there you sit, and you finally relax into this present moment. You've forgiven everybody and everything. You have now decided that time is insignificant and not your friend. And you come to this joyful place of acceptance, where you're just there, and everything is just going to happen or not happen, and you don't care. Because, as Kashanti said last week, when you come to that place of acceptance, when you have that perfect balance, when you have equanimity, you find yourself stuck in the middle. Stuck in the middle of everything. There's no right or there's no wrong, there's no Democrat or Republican, there's no good, there's no bad. You're stuck in the middle. Your opinions are useless. Your worldview doesn't work anymore because you always had to choose sides in your worldview. And now you've gone from forgiveness to patience to acceptance, and now you're stuck in the middle. So what do? Nothing. You've come to the place of being able to do nothing very skillfully. And you allow the world to manifest naturally in just the way it's supposed to manifest. And you might even marvel as it unfolds in front of your sense doors, not expecting the next thing to happen because you had planned something else to happen. And that never happened at all. But the thing that really happened, the true reality of that present moment, was spectacular. And now you marvel at how magical life can be. That you don't even have to plan it very well, because it just does what it's going to do. And people say, be here at 4, and you say, okay, I may be early, I may be late, I may not even come at all. Let's see what happens. And you get in your car. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And it's okay either way. You've come to this place of, yeah, I have a life, and I know how it's going to end. I know how it started, and I have no clue what's going on in the middle. But I've been educated, and I have algebra. And maybe that will help me with the meaning of everything. And again, maybe it won't. So this path for me has just been wonderful. It has allowed me to live at IBMC for over 20 years without many expectations at all. You know, sometimes with IBMC you wonder if it's going to last for a day or a week or a year, and 40 years later it's still here. And all you can say is, why? There's a need for places like this to be here. And everybody plans on keeping it here, but nobody is ever sure that all that planning is going to pan out. Ever going to come to any satisfactory conclusion. So you just wake up in the morning and you go out and you feed the cats and make sure all the fish are there and the raccoons haven't eaten them. And you watch the sunrise or the sunset, and people come and go, and you just go, wow, what a great day. And then you go to sleep. And then you wake up, hopefully the next day, and it might happen again, and it might not. But if you live in the middle, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's a quote I just posted on Facebook, which I will sort of recite now. It goes like this: when you've made peace with death, then you can find refuge in change. And that's what I think patience is all about. Finding refuge in change. Having the mindset necessary to be present and to watch it unfold in its perfection. I think I'm going to stop there. Does anybody have comments or questions about faith or patience? Does anybody have either of those qualities? You know?
No. That's where I got this name. It means patience. It was what I was supposed to try to achieve.
Yeah, so far so good?
No.
No, well, it's a tough one. So forgiveness worked for me. That was my first step in finding patience. It's just forgiving everyone who prevented me from doing what I was supposed to do, and then forgiving myself and wanting it to be different. Yeah.
How about lowering your expectations?
How about lowering them?
So in order to not have expectations, therefore, I assume the person will leave the register and the traffic will be horrible, so therefore I will never be disappointed. It's a way of avoiding suffering.
You know, I think that's a wonderful concept to use as we age. I think the idea when we're young, everything is possible, and our expectations are high. and we get into middle age, and some things are possible, and then we get into old age, and nothing is possible. And so it's like, yeah, so naturally the expectations lower by themselves. But because we want things to be different than they are, we keep the bar high. And we keep chasing that carrot, and we never get a bite. So I have found absolutely, the older I get, the lower my expectations. And sometimes, you know, it might be, maybe I won't get out of bed, you know. Maybe I've come to that place where I don't want to put my feet on the ground anymore. Just want to lay there. So, yeah, so I think that's good. Not to do it to have your life be better than it is, but to do it because it parallels the reality you're experiencing. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, that's good. So now we have no expectations, we have no patience, and we have no faith. We're becoming very zen, you see, just sitting here in this moment, waiting for nothing to happen. Yeah?
I read a practice somewhere, and I did it for a while, but now you've reminded me I want to restart this practice, that upon waking up in the morning, to ask the question, I wonder what today will bring.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's right next to your to-do list. You know? Yeah, you have your to-do list, and then you have, I wonder what today will bring. And then we'll see which one is more accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the deal, you know. Yesterday, I had to leave early to go to the wedding, and we had a cat that somebody found, I think Vinita probably found it 3 or 4 days ago. Hanging around, nice looking cat, but it hated to be outside. It was an indoor cat, and somebody abandoned it or something. So I posted on Facebook the picture of the cat, and that day somebody said, I want that cat. And yesterday they came to pick it up. So I'm coordinating the pickup of the cat. We had a 2-hour meditation retreat in the morning, and I'm leaving at 2:30. And I thought to myself, how did I get this big list of things to do? I just wanted to do a wedding today, and yet all the other stuff came about. So that sometimes is a challenge too, when there's more to do than you had anticipated. And how do you make sense of that? And that's where this sort of patience things come in. You're patiently waiting for the next moment to arise, and you're sort of tidying up and closing the last moment that you experienced. So waving goodbye to the family who took the cat, looking at the fruitfulness line, you know, it just sort of goes on and on and on. And then you finally get back to your refuge IBMC, and the cats greet you at the gate, you know, and there's the quiet, you know, well, it's never really quiet here. We always have helicopters and sirens and cars, but it seemed quiet compared to what I had been involved in. And that was so nice. It actually seemed like the end, but then you say, okay, so when I wake up in the morning, I say, today is Sunday. Because when you don't work, it's hard to keep track of the days. And then I say, what do I have to do today? And sometimes I have one thing to do or 2 things to do. And then sometimes I have nothing to do. So then, when I have nothing to do, then I have to create things to do. Because you just can't do nothing. So we go to Facebook, and I post some clever cat pictures with quotes from very wise people. I read a few articles. I have my Kindle is full, and I have so many books to read. And so if I have nothing that I'm obligated to do that day, whoa, I have more than enough to do. Sometimes being obligated means I do less rather than more. And then with a tired mind and a heavy body, I just rest until the next day. And in a way, that's sort of a blessing. As you get older, generally speaking, you might have less to do. And I find as I get older, generally speaking, I have more to do. And I'm thinking maybe it's the line of work I chose. That old people are supposed to be wiser. And it seems to be the case. They're wise in the sense of what not to do. You see, when you're young, everything is a potential to do. When you get old, you know what you don't want to do anymore. And that's sort of nice. So somebody asked me last night at the wedding, do you travel? do you fly for conferences? I said, no, I have decided if I never travel again by airplane, I will have a good life. And I drew a circle on a map. And if it takes any longer than a day to drive there, we can Skype. You know, and there you go. So you're just sort of closing that circle down. And doing the important things or the things that need to be done. And all those mandatory fun things are never fun anyway. So those are sort of left by the wayside. Thanks for sharing that. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi. I have a question about if there is, because I know with generosity or loving kindness, that actual practice in Vipassana or you take into meditation, I was wondering if there was a practice that generated a more patient mind that you could do during meditation.
Yes, absolutely. Oftentimes the thought will come into your mind, did the bell ringer die? Hasn't it been a half hour yet? Seems like a day. What's wrong with him? When's he going to ring the gong? So when those thoughts arise, that's perfect chance to practice patience, you know. And it's also an interesting time to evaluate your concept of time. You know, because I'm lucky I've got a little clock here that tells me, but I'll be darned if I can feel a half hour anymore, or an hour anymore. And that's why I always wear a watch, which is something that a lot of people don't do. They have, you know, cell phones. I have a flip phone. I don't want to look at it, so I have a watch. But the watch allows me to know when the appropriate amount of time has gone by so I can do the next thing. I can't feel it anymore. And I think that comes from meditation. I think from visiting that present moment in your meditation practice enough time, you sort of lose the concept of when it begins and when it ends. And so when the ringer hasn't rung, I just sit and marvel at my impatience. You know, because this practice is designed to give us patience. We sit for long periods of time doing nothing. No place to go, nothing to say. And sometimes, you know, when the doorbell rings and it's 7:15 and meditation starts at 7:30, I marvel at how eager people are to sit and do nothing. They'll come early to do it, you know? And then they get aggravated if you don't answer the door. Well, I said to myself, it starts at 7:30, why are they here at 7:15? And why do they feel it necessary to get in any sooner than they have to? This is not designed to be fun. This is designed to change your mind. It's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of suffering and pain that goes on in the process of meditation. And they're so eager to come in. And it reminds me of the Karate Kid. You go to the Zen temple and you knock on the door and you sit and wait for 4 days. Until finally somebody opens the door and says, yeah, you can work in the kitchen. You know, it's like, yeah. So I'm sort of training people when they come early and I don't open. Yeah, patience. It's a wonderful practice. And patience, I find, is seldom found in humans and never found in cats. So you have this, you know, dichotomy of patience and doing what you want to do now, American mindset, and yet sometimes those two don't blend very well. So yeah, you can have patience at the door, and you can have patience on the cushion, and you can have patience at Food for Less. And it all works. Every day we have so many opportunities to practice. Thanks, Rebecca. Jeannie, how about you? Anything you'd like to say?
No, I'm just,
Just being patient?
yeah.
Waiting for it to end? Okay. That's good.
Karuna kind of lived the way with no expectations, kind of. Like we would go to Little Saigon and she'd tell, exit at this place and we'll meet up. But she wouldn't say where. And miraculously we would meet up.
Wow. Well, that's a whole another level of practice. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And I need maps and, you know, time and thought.
Well, it's terrifying if you're the driver. I mean, you just where do I go from here? I'm off the, and then there she is.
And there she is. Yeah, you know, it's fascinating that how much information we have in our head as we're driving, and the exit, and you know, the freeway number, and I'm just going, wow, you know, and it takes, sometimes it's just so stressful to get from point A to point B in Los Angeles, and there's always more cars, there's never less. And I've literally had to stop accepting invitations to speak in like Irvine at 8 o'clock in the morning, you know, at the high school. I said, you know, if it's later, if it's noon, I can probably make it, but to get to Irvine at 8 o'clock, I gotta leave here at 6:30. And then I gotta feed the cats at 6. Why even go to sleep, you know? and then you're there for like an hour, and then you got another hour and a half, 2 hour drive back. It's an amazing event to get to any place these days. So I might just start using Uber, you know? Yes, Irvine, please. And just sit back and read, yeah.
I'm impatient to know the answer. Did you make it on time to the wedding?
You know, I was actually a little early.
Time compressed.
So all my, you know, all my anxiety and fear about being late because I had such a prominent role to play, if I just needed to be there, it would have been much different. But I'm thinking, will they wait for me if I'm not there? Or will they start without me, you know? And then I figured, well, no, I don't have to worry about that. And I was, last year I gave a talk in San Bernardino at an inter-religious gathering, and I was supposed to meet these people in Claremont. And then we drive the rest of the way because San Bernardino's a really long way. So I drove into Claremont, and I was about 5 minutes late, and I pulled over and called and said, you know, I'm just about there. And he said, we'll wait for you. And so I had to give it to him when I saw him. I said, you know, thank you for waiting for me, but I'm the guest speaker. Would you have left without me? I mean, you know, but it was such a pattern to say that, yes, we'll wait. So it's funny, traveling and patience and having faith that you might make it there at the appropriate time. So it all fits in. All the stuff I talked about today is like, can be practiced in everyday life, which is what Buddhism, I think, is all about. It isn't some highfalutin, on the mountain kind of philosophy, though it can be, but it's really how to live your life every day, and not kill people, and not kill yourself, you know, and ultimately be kind. As the Dalai Lama said, my religion is kindness. But it takes 30 years of practice to be kind in all the different situations we find ourselves involved in every day. So, having said that, our time has ended, and let's chant page 10.